Hello and welcome to the Moonshots Podcast. It's episode 266. I'm your co-host, Mike Parsons, and as always, I'm joined by the man himself, Mr. Mark Pearson-Freeland. Good morning, Mark.
Hey, good morning, Mike, and good morning, members, listeners, viewers, subscribers, everybody who's out there leaning in today into learning out loud with us here on the Moonshots Podcast.
It's crazy to think that we're episode 266, and we've only managed to get ourselves to a book that came out a decade ago, which is an absolute powerhouse. And I would say, Mark, if you liked Cal Newport's deep work, then this show takes it to another level.
Yeah, I think you're totally right, Mike. And how we've got through 266 shows, and this book is so essential. I am just amazed that we've probably covered a lot of these topics, but finally we're having the joy of being able to lean into it and actually dig into some of the work from Greg McKeown's Essentialism, the disciplined pursuit of less. Now, Mike, we're going to obviously lean into a lot of the themes in this book. I think it's fair to say that for you, this has been a book that's always maintained a sort of top of the pile reference book, if you want to call it that, where you can lean in and really find out some of those tips that Greg breaks down. And obviously today we're going to lean into how Greg has a lesson for all of us with regards to prioritization, limiting those non-essential distractions. Boy, what a great call to action that would be, but also maximizing the productivity as well as satisfaction that I think a lot of us can get from the tasks and the jobs that we have each day to do. So, I mean, I think it's about time that we managed to get into this book, right?
It is about time. It's taken us a decade since it was published. But yeah. I believe this even has like a Netflix show on essentialism. There's certainly feels like there's been a whole movement around this idea. Greg may not be the original author, but I think he's definitely created one of the go-to sources in his book. And this book and this show is for anybody who's made the decision they want to pour themselves and their energy into a calling, be it a project, be it their community, be it their business, their product, or any other creative athletic endeavor. And the thing is, like, when you give all of this energy, you have to direct it. And what I find is that this book is go-to if you want to harness your energy and understand that by working on fewer things, by simplifying and making the essential choices in your personal, private life, in your relationships, in your house. Mark, I'm going to even go this far. Go to your wardrobe. This show will help you choose the color of your underpants. It's all about taking this spirit of Cal Newport's deep work or Marie Kondo's ideas and applying it to everything in life. So the net effect is that whatever you're working on gets most of your attention. So if that's you, get ready because Mark is about to unleash the clips.
Oh, well, hot off the press following that, I've got to say we're going to kick off with a powerhouse of a clip, Mike. We're going to hear from Greg McKeown himself. He's going to introduce us to the concept that he covers in Essentialism, and he's going to help us understand this concept of a disciplined pursuit of less. So let's hear now from Greg to help us understand and decide what is essential and how less is better.
I've spent the last 15 years pretty obsessed by a single question, which is, what is it that holds capable, driven people from breaking through to the next level? And the answer to that question, to my great surprise, is success. I first observed this working with executive teams in Silicon Valley, where I noticed that when they were focused on a few things, it led to success. But success breeded so many opportunities and options that diffused the very focus that led to success in the first place. And so, exaggerating the point in order to make it, I found that success becomes a catalyst for failure, because it leads to what Jim Collins called the undisciplined pursuit of more. The antidote to that problem is the disciplined pursuit of less but better. That means exploring the very critical things you want to pursue and being willing to then, number 2, eliminate the rest. And number 3, build a platform for effortless execution so that doing what is essential becomes the default position, not just the rare occasion. My position is that when people really get a chance to think and have the space, that they can quite easily discern between the things that are essential to them, important to them, and those things that are not. The problem is not our ability to discern, it's that we don't have the space to take the time to discern. Once we have that perspective, we can think through it. So my position is that we need to develop a routine that enables that space to think. In a world where we have so much information, we need more time to think and process it, not less. And so, one CEO that I interviewed for the book has 2 hours on his calendar every day, broken up into half-hour segments, so that he has this space to stop, to turn everything off, to think, to see the bigger picture. I think we could all do something similar to that.
You know, that's so interesting, because I think what Greg captures there, Mark, is this war that I talk about, this war for our attention. It's a fight for our energy and where it goes. And it's crazy because a geriatric like me remembers a life without internet. I remember turning up in my 20s, to be actually specific, 20 years of age, and I used to send faxes to my clients for the first few hours every morning. Now, I can do that same distribution of information in about 5 minutes to the entire universe rather than just 20 clients, right?
Wow.
So here's the thing. You have no idea, if you're under the age of 40 and you've grown up mostly with the internet in a professional setting, you have no idea how much our attention is stolen, right? And that's, that hour on Instagram is an hour that didn't go into reading that book or working on that idea or contributing to your local community. That's the trade-off. And we're going to talk a lot about trade-offs. But once you say to yourself, I'm going to give all of myself to something, what you have to almost do, Mark, is see the world is doing everything it can to distract you from achieving that goal. And it might sound a little ruthless, but I think if this thing means something to you, if it means enough to you, you will trade off, you'll say no, you will focus on what truly matters. You will focus on less things and do them better. So, Mark, when you clear the decks and get focused, tell me, what is the greatest enemy that you face when trying to focus on fewer things? When you're like, I've got some things that matter to me. Maybe it's running a marathon, working on a project. What's the hardest thing about working on less but better? Where does it manifest in the day for you?
Yeah, that's a good one. I think there's a lot of work that we can talk about today with regards to focus, prioritization. For me, when I've got a lot on my plate and when I want to really focus on those things that really matter, going back to our master series with Cal Newport, the idea of having a daily, weekly, quarterly plan, that will define, I think, those priorities that I want to get done. But you're right. It's very, very easy to say yes to so many things because opportunities, at least for a lot of us, we were grown up with the insight that you should say yes to as many opportunities as you can because you don't know how often they'll come around.
Right.
And obviously there's a lot of financial implications that a lot of us have. There's the default position to just absorb whatever people hand to you because that's sort of the workplace mentality. When it comes to me, Mike, it is saying no. Saying no is the real challenge because even though I might know in the heart of hearts that if I take on this extra project, that's going to be an extra 2 hours a day. That means 2 hours less doing the work that I was kind of excited by or the work that I think will actually have an impact on tomorrow and next month and next year. And it just reprioritizes and deprioritizes a lot of the work and the passion that I would want to put into something.
Yes.
So really understanding and having an objective look at what I've got going on and being able to cherry pick the items that I know really matter to me, and being able to actually, as we're going to find out in today's show, start to say no to some of that stuff is such a huge aha moment, isn't it?
Yeah. So where it comes to me is I often say yes, and the mistake is the wishful thinking. Okay.
It won't be as bad. It'll be easier than I think.
Oh, that sounds really exciting.
Yeah.
And then you're like, oh boy. For example, let's say somebody comes along and says, hey, Mike, we know you're really into rugby and you're a certified rugby coach. Can you come and coach our team? What I always do is go, oh, what a great team, what a great program. But then I start doing it, and then I realize, oh, I have to leave home an hour before I need to be there, but I need to be there early to help set up for training. And then I need to work with one of the players after training to refine something. Oh, that's 4 to 5 hours. Oh my gosh, I didn't realize I was saying yes to 5 hours. So I find myself victim to wishful thinking, like, oh, it'll be easy. Oh, no problem. Like I'm so wishful and so optimistic about how I perceive my actual time allocation that I that's where I'm breaking all the rules of essentialism. And so what I try to do is a number of things that we're going to talk about in this show to avoid saying yes and then regretting it,
Yeah. And, to build on that, I think the reason why a lot of us say yes is because of genuine enthusiasm or curiosity.
Yeah.
When I've been approached with, tasks or jobs or even hobbies that do not align with the work that I might be doing or the focuses that I'm trying to put into my life, I'll often say, yeah, of course I can pick up this new habit. Why not learn Mandarin? And if I'm objective about it, and that's a true story, I learned Mandarin for a couple of years, but if I'm objective about it and I look back at that, I didn't need to, because I was working with a lot of clients in China, but we all spoke English a lot.
Right.
So with hindsight, if I look back at the time, and that was about 4 or 5 hours a week, I could have utilized that time in more productive ways,
right,
in order to facilitate maybe the actual work we were doing, rather than the kind of hobbyist approach, thinking, hey, I'm kind of curious about this. This could be fun.
Yeah.
Having that objective look is something that now I can appreciate through the work of Greg, Essentialism, as well as a lot of the other authors that we've been leaning into, including Cal.
Well, so here's the interesting thing. We really do need to buy into this idea of less but better. It reminds me of the Einstein show that we did. And we identified, there was this great quote from Einstein and I'm paraphrasing here. It's like, look, I'm not really any smarter than anybody else. But his secret was, and he goes on to say, I just spent more time thinking about one problem than anybody else. And Mark, that's essentialism.
Yeah.
If you truly buy the idea of less but better, you have a smaller house. So there's less to maintain, less mortgage to pay. You have a simpler, monochromatic wardrobe. So there's less to think about in the morning. You have a set of atomic habits that you never change. So you get yourself in a great start to the day. You do that so that you have an unfair amount of energy left in the batteries to apply to whatever really matters. When you have made a lot of complexity, you just have to divide your time by more variables. So you cannot do what Einstein celebrated. Focus less, solving less things, but solving them better. That to me is the power of this idea. But the funny thing that we'll get to in a second is it leads to a whole catch-22 once you start doing this. But I tell you, if there are any practitioners in this world, Mark, who are focused on being better, it's our members.
Look, Mike, you couldn't say it. I couldn't say it better myself. You're totally right. In this world of understanding new tips and finding out those unfair advantages, if you want to call them that, those penny drop moments that each of us find every week as we lean into the Moonshot show and all these amazing authors. I know that behind the scenes, there are a family of people that are just as excited as you and I, and are picking up these insights and activating them in their lives every single week. So without further ado, bring out the trumpet and welcome in Bob, Niles, iTrip, Dietmar, Marjan, Connor, Lisa and Sid, Mr. Bonjour, Paul, Bergen, Cowman, Joe, Christian, Samuela and Barbara, Deborah, Lasse, Stephen, Craig, Ravi, Yvette, Raul and Nikawara, Ingram, Dirk, Venkata, Marco, Jet, Roger, Stefan, Raw, Nimalen, Diana, Christoph and Denise, Laura, Smitty, Corey and Daniela, Mike, Antonio, Zachary and Austin, Fred, Ola, Andy, Diana, Margie, Ron, Jasper, Fabian, Gu Hong, and Edward. Guys, thank you so much for joining us and being part of the Moonshots family, as well as learning out loud with us every single week, month after month, leaning into habits and tricks that really help us have an unfair advantage and be the best version of ourselves.
Yes, they are the few who have really paid it forward, and we deeply appreciate the contribution. And we hope that this next clip will really talk to those members, because what happens is if you become very focused on being essential, you will see the magic of compound interest. You'll start getting results. And when you're getting results, people want to talk to you, meet you, maybe collaborate with you, do a project with you, hire you, marry you. Who knows?
Yeah.
Maybe it's those monochromatic underpants. I don't know. But here's the thing. If you're not careful, this success can become a trap in and of itself. So, Mark, why don't you unleash this next clip?
This big insight is going to pay dividends to all of us who are in that type of situation where we take on a lot of things thinking that it's going to improve, maybe even benefit us in the long run. But as Greg's going to help us understand and break down a little bit further in this next clip, like you say, success can sometimes be a bit of a catalyst to failure if we choose to let it.
If you don't prioritize your life, someone else will. And out of that grew a question. I mean, let me just put it to you really quickly, right? I mean, that's what I learned, right? But what about you? I want to do a quick poll. I want you to snap if any of these are true for you, right? Snap. We're going to do a quick poll. Have you ever found yourself stretched too thin at work or at home? Snap for that. I've got some people dancing at the back to this. Have you ever found yourself busy but not productive? Snap for that. All right. Have you ever found yourself saying yes just to please, or to appease, or just to avoid trouble? Right. The question is why? Right? That's a non-trivial question. Why do otherwise successful people find themselves stretched too thin at work or at home? Why? I spent years, I quit my job. That was probably a good idea, wasn't it? Quit my job, started a new company, and pursued this question with serious passion. Why is it that this happens? And this is what I found. An answer hidden in plain sight. The reason that otherwise successful people find themselves stretched too thin at work or at home is success. Yes. Oh, what's the pattern? Here's the pattern. You get focused. Right few things, right time, put a lot of energy in, generates tremendous momentum, leads to success. Good. What comes with success? New options and opportunities. That's it. That's what we want. That sounds like the right problem to have, but it does in fact turn out to be a problem. If it leads to what Jim Collins has called the undisciplined pursuit of more. The undisciplined pursuit of more. If you fall into that problem, now I'm exaggerating the point in order to make it, but success can become a catalyst for failure. Like Bill Gates said, success is a very poor teacher. Right, okay, so I'm not anti-success. That would be the wrong place to have such a message, perhaps. But here's what I've learned. I've learned that you have to become successful at success. And it's a different kind of discipline. In fact, the antidote to the undisciplined pursuit of more is the disciplined pursuit of less but better.
Less but better, or becoming successful at managing success.
Yeah.
So I think he nailed it. It's this dopamine hit of more, right? I think that is truly where it's at, because we think we're growing and achieving because people want to speak to us. I remember one time, and I had read the book, and a couple of years ago, somebody reached out to me and asked me to be on a blockchain podcast. And I knew this person professionally, and I just merely answered their request with, hey, it sounds like you're doing a cool show, but I'm not sure what I can add, as I'm not a blockchain specialist. And, I only know a little bit about it. Tell me, like, what do you think we would discuss together? Because I'm just not sure how I could serve your audience. And guess what? They didn't even answer my email.
Oh.
Now, let's imagine then, let's follow this up a bit, because I think there's something really big in here. If they had really wanted me, and let's just say for whatever reason my email didn't go through, they would have followed up.
Correct. Mm-hmm.
If they were really busy, they would have got to it the following week.
Yeah.
But what does it tell you when they didn't even answer my clarification request? I think it's very interesting that I heard absolutely nothing back. Do you think?
Yeah.
Do you think, Mark, that they really, really wanted me on the podcast, or was it just, hey, we know Mike, he's got a big popular show, maybe we can get some of his listeners, let's ask him?
I think it was. I mean, look, I'm not going to play down your skills across any areas, Mike, but you're right. Based on that follow-up behavior, it seems as though they just wanted to tap into, maybe the spread that we have, but also your knowledge. And when you then push back and say, hey, help me understand why,
Right.
Go a little bit further, provide me some details. It sounds as though they didn't really have that prioritized, did they?
So think about this. If a host of a podcast can't even tell me, like, answer the question, how do we provide value to the listeners? Well, if I had spent 2 or 3 hours in that commitment and I wasn't working on something meaningful for myself, I would have been a victim of more. And of course, it's very flattering if someone says, hey, can you speak at this event? Could you be on this podcast? Could you attend this or that? But by just merely asking the question, not sure what value we could create together, tell me more, and get nothing back, I feel like I saved myself half a day.
So I think the insight there is getting curious about the opportunity, isn't it? So it's almost, it's part and parcel of, I think, what we're learning today, which is being objective at accepting requests. So whether that's a new project in your day job, maybe that's picking up a new hobby, or maybe it's an opportunity that comes along quite out of the blue. By getting curious and asking the question before you say, oh yeah, definitely, I'll do that, without knowing what you're getting yourself into, you could potentially open up a can of worms, so to speak, that then is a real time sap. I remember, Mike, having a project that I picked up or inherited to a certain extent when I was working with a fintech business a few years ago in Australia. There was a task that needed to happen. It wasn't connected to what I do in my job at the time, but instead I could see that nobody else was really doing it. And I thought, okay, well, maybe I'll pick this up because this would be really, really handy to do. And I'm curious, so why not give it a go? With hindsight, I did not appreciate how much legwork there would be, how much
Right.
requirement there would be to create additional documentation that then I would have to pitch in to leaders and so on in order to get it over the line, because I wasn't curious prior to saying yes to it. Instead,
Absolutely.
I jumped in feet first without checking the depth.
Yes. So this is, I think, in terms of a mindset and a paradigm, when you say and truly buy into less but better, you start to question things that you might otherwise automatically accept and commit to, right?
Mm.
And this is so powerful because then you can go do the deep work. Then you can go and master something. Then you can go and spend more time than anybody else solving that problem. And that's where the real value gets created. So I'm very excited about these next two clips, because now that we've established, hey, it's not more but better, it's less but better. Now we've made that case. Mark, I think it's time for us to dig into the question of how do we practice less but better? What do you got?
Yes. This is the part of the show that you and I, as well as I know all of our members and listeners, really lean into. We've understood and been introduced by Greg with regards to the reasons why you want to be curious and why you should consider saying less to, or no to more things. What we're now going to hear from Productivity Game are some really actionable tips, Mike. They're going to help you and I really understand how we might be able to install this window of reflection and this ability to say no to more things in our daily life. So let's hear now from Productivity Game, who has got, Mike, I promise you, some tips that are going to get you and I really excited, and probably our Moonshots listeners and fan favorites are going to recognize some of these tips and think, this is definitely something I need to install into my life. So let's hear from Productivity Game with regards to some essential tips.
Greg's helped me adopt new habits that prevent the non-essential things from creeping into my life. First, I learned to be more diligent about keeping a journal. Now, it sounds pretty basic and it doesn't sound like it can do much, but having the ability to set aside time, to take that bigger view, to be a journalist of your life, allows you to identify patterns of what really is essential, what really matters to you day after day. Because we are easily disillusioned by the media, by our environment, we need to really check in with ourselves and make sure that we are on track. And journaling is one of the best tools to do this. To journal often, simply leave your journal on your bed or on the couch or on the kitchen table. Some place where you're always going to run into it, where you can just jot down a few words, a few ideas that you can then reflect on. The second habit of the essentialist is learning the art of the awkward pause. If you're about to instinctively say yes to a request, just pause for a little bit longer, 3 to 4 seconds. What that does is let the person know that you're seriously considering it. It also gives you time to think of the trade-offs that you're going to make by saying yes. If you say yes to that, what are you saying no to? Lastly, to ensure that our priorities remain our priorities, we need to make space in our day to strengthen our ability to be selective and recognize the trade-offs. First, we need to reserve time to think. We need space in our day to allow us to differentiate between the options that we have. Protecting your thinking time could involve reserving 15-minute blocks throughout the day between meetings and before key events. It's a time where you think strategically how you're approaching your life. You consider what you're currently saying no to and what you should be saying no to. The second thing we need to protect is playtime. A study of over 6,000 people concluded that play leads to brain plasticity, adaptability, and creativity. Nothing fires up the brain like play. Greg says it helps us to see possibilities we otherwise wouldn't have seen and make connections we would otherwise not have made. It opens our minds and broadens our perspective. It helps us challenge old assumptions and makes us more receptive to untested ideas. So play during conversations with friends and family. Play by picking up a new sport or activity. Play by making up and engaging in games. A third essential thing we need to protect is sleep time. Bill Clinton was quoted as saying, "Every major mistake that I've made has happened as a result of sleep deprivation." Sleep affects our judgment and our awareness. The less sleep we get, the more non-essential things are able to creep into our life. If you're willing to take the challenge of carving out time to make sure you have a good sleep, you'll see that your awareness of choice dramatically goes up, and you have the ability to identify the trade-offs and make tough decisions throughout the day. Greg leaves us with a basic value proposition of essentialism. Only once you give yourself permission to stop trying to do it all, To stop saying yes to everyone, can you make your highest contribution towards the things that really matter?
Oh boy.
Ooh.
In one clip, Mark, I think that summary of Greg, it's like almost like somewhere between Cal Newport, Deep Work, James Clear, Atomic Habits, but taken to even another level. Like, this is the playbook. Because if you've decided to really have a go at life and be the best you can be, you'll invariably need to do each and every one of those things, because you'll be exercising, you'll be stretching in the mornings, maybe meditating in the evenings, you'll be journaling, you'll be active with friends and family, you'll be having some creative time. And by the way, you have to work and sleep. So you do the math out of the 24 hours, it sounds like that's 44 hours worth of work.
That's a big.
So you got to make these choices and you've got to develop these habits. And I think that what we are seeing now is a crazy situation. We have done a whole series on journaling where you can ask yourself the question, am I being essential? And if there was one thing that our listeners, our viewers, and our members could take from this show, is challenging yourself in the safety of your own journal will be the best way to live a more essential life. Wouldn't you agree?
I do this actually a little bit, Mike. If there's one space that we can be truly honest, apart from you and I sharing our insights each week on the Moonshots podcast, in addition to that, being able to actually challenge yourself. So in my case, I'll sit there with my journal and I will put the things that are making me really uncomfortable. Maybe it's some hard truths. Maybe it's some paranoia or regret, whatever it might be, something that I really don't want to scratch. It's the itch that you don't want to scratch.
Yeah.
The scab that you don't really want to peek at.
Yep.
By really writing it down and contextualizing how you're feeling about something. Let's say it is a discomfort or regret or whatever it might be. While I'm writing it down, I feel cathartic. And what I mean by that is it is a weight that's then released. And what I notice once I take this tip from Greg and obviously the series that we've done in journaling, I will then feel lighter and I'll be able to move on from it.
Yeah.
So I think it's probably the same similar benefit that people have from talk therapy, from counseling and so on. It's the same effect, maybe with sharing it with a loved one or a friend. But the act of actually getting it out and putting a name to it, naming the beast, is then cathartic in the sense that you can understand next time that action, that behavior, that thought process, how it felt. And what I've noticed through the act of journaling and reflecting is that sometimes when I start to feel a little bit anxious or a little bit nervous or edgy or whatever it might be, I'll think back to that time when I felt it before. And I can't tell you, Mike, and I know you probably experience it too, how useful that is, because then I know and can keep myself in check with regards to how I behave around others. So I'm more productive. I'm probably a better version of myself to others because I'm able to check myself.
Yes.
So impossibly helpful, isn't it?
Yeah. So I remember that my wife said to me the observation, this was pre-COVID, right? So she said to me when I was coaching professional men's football, rugby side, she was like, we hardly ever have a family meal around the table during the week because you've got a lot of calls, then you have rugby practice. And she made this comment relative to our teenage son. And I really thought about that. And I was like, oh, I could see a choice that I made to participate in coaching in sports was taking me away from the family. And I had the space to think about and consider this. And I stopped coaching, in part because of the time commitment. I realized I had said yes to too many things, and I wasn't doing my job as a dad. So I think the reality is we get these little tips, tricks, feedback, signals from our family and friends and colleagues all the time. But you got to have a way to have space. Like you could be like, oh, my colleague said something to me the other day. And you know what? We can just wave it off because we're too busy.
Yeah. Yeah.
But if you pause and go, oh, hang on, maybe I should reflect on that. Is there something I could have done better? And you need time for that. You need journaling to clear your head out. Otherwise, it just gets dusty. And I think this idea of adopting these practices, I mean, just quickly, the list that he gave us so that we kind of know where we're going. We've got like there's trade-offs, clarity of purpose, boundaries, rest and play, saying no, escaping the busyness, reflection. There's all sorts of things that just came up as the habits of an essentialist. But here's the real thing. If I don't have time to at least answer this question in my journal every day, how do I feel right now? And if I can't put one word down, that is like warning, signal, like, Mike, too busy, not enough space, right?
Yeah.
Maybe I'm forgiving if I have a very early call and I skip it one day. But I would never allow that second or third day for that pattern to continue.
Yeah, big time. And it's one of the key questions that comes up when you're meditating as well, doesn't it? If you're following something like Headspace, one of the tasks will always be to scan through your body and just notice how you feel. And the challenge or the output, I suppose, is the same, isn't it? You're reflecting on yourself, you're understanding and noticing how you might be feeling. And only then can you actually objectively look at what's going on and why you might be feeling like that. Maybe I'm feeling a little bit tired or a little bit dejected. Okay, well, now let's get curious. What is it? What have I changed recently? Oh, I took on that extra responsibility. You know what? I don't think I actually have time to do that justice anymore. It doesn't give me time to see my family. It doesn't give me time to stay healthy or prioritize my own well-being. Only when you get curious and you can be really objective about that, can you then go on to what we're hearing from Greg, which is learning how to say no, how to prioritize. Because
think about it. If I hadn't reflected on my wife's comment, or you hadn't reflected on this additional project you picked up at the fintech, then the chances are we'd make the same mistakes again.
Of course. It's natural.
Right? So where it comes to is this looking at where this book by Greg really fuses with so much of the best practices we've learned in this show. By the way, if anyone is interested in the Cal Newport show, Master Series, Deep Work, and plenty of other topics, or Atomic Habits by James Clear, just go to moonshots.io. All the back catalogue is there. But back to what I was saying. If we are not introducing some reflection, we will continually make these mistakes and then have this feeling at the end of the month or the year going, I'm a little bit off track. And the thing is, the worst thing about that is you will not have the reflection to go, oh, and the problem is this, then the solution is that. You'll just be like in a funk. You'll just be like, it doesn't feel great. So maybe you're like, maybe you go out a little too much, maybe have an extra too many beers at the bar kind of situation because you're bothered by something, but you're not creating any space to reflect. And really, if you are feeling that, being essential, stripping things back to only truly the things that matter, less but better. If you don't do that, you'll always feel this little funk, like I'm not really on track. And the power punch that we can learn, Mark, the knockout punch here is saying no, isn't it?
Yeah, it really, really is. That tip that we heard in that last clip, give yourself the breathing space to really consider what people are asking you. I think that's such an easy, practical tip. Take a pause, 3 to 4 seconds. And the reason for that is it gives you the opportunity to reflect and possibly say no. So, Mike, good news. in the spirit of productivity tips and habits and acts that we can pick up every single day, we do have one more clip today in Greg McKeown's Essentialism. So we're going to hear from Productivity Game again. He's going to help us with a couple of case studies that I know for a fact our Moonshots listeners and viewers are going to love. So we're going to hear from Productivity Game now, break down this idea of saying no, the idea of prioritization, the idea of knowing your limits, by helping us understand the benefits of actually sitting down and saying no.
We are presented with hundreds of options a day. An essentialist looks at those options by asking him or herself, what trade-offs am I willing to make? I know I can't have it all, so what problem do I want to solve? Greg explains 2 examples of some of the best strategic choosers of our day. True essentialists, Warren Buffett and Herb Kelleher of Southwest Airlines. Greg relays a quote from the Tao of Warren Buffett. Warren decided early in his career it would be impossible for him to make hundreds of right investment decisions. So he decided that he would invest only in the businesses that he was absolutely sure of, and then bet heavily on them. He owes 90% of his wealth to just 10 investments. Sometimes what you don't do is just as important as what you do. Greg summarizes this as saying, he makes big bets on the essential few investment opportunities and says no to the many merely good ones. On a scale of 1 to 10, there are many things that come in at a 7 or 8. They're good opportunities, and we hate to let them pass. But we need to adopt what Derek Sivers says, a hell yes or a no approach. Either this is an amazing opportunity, hell yeah, or no, sorry, I don't do that. Greg says we need to learn the art of letting go of 7s and 8s to only do 9s and 10s. Warren Buffett once said that for every 100 great opportunities that are brought to me, I say no to 99 of them. To be one of the best investors of all time, you need to be selective. You need to hone and be proud of your ability to say no. Herb Kelleher of Southwest Airlines treated every no as a yes for his company. When he would say no, he would consider it a strategic trade-off. Saying no to one thing enabled him to say yes to something else. To say yes to his company culture, to say yes to standing out amongst the other airlines. Herb said, you have to look at every opportunity and say, well, no, I'm sorry. We're not going to do 1,000 different things that really won't contribute much to the end result that we're trying to achieve. Herb made Southwest the dominant airline because he said no to destinations that weren't point to point. He said no to serving meals, and he said no to first class. Those no's were made deliberately, and they made all the difference. Greg says, quote, at first, Southwest was lambasted by critics, naysayers, and other non-essentialists who couldn't believe that his approach could possibly be successful. First they mocked him, then they copied him.
You know, the great irony is that they all copied him really badly. So when the airlines copied, they only did it partially. So they didn't follow all the rules because they couldn't be essentialists. Great case study to look into, by the way.
Yeah.
So, look, this is the hard thing. If something's a 1, it's easy a no. If something's a 10, it's an easy yet. But it's all in the middle, isn't it, Mark? How do you know? How do you know when something is a dangerous 7?
Yeah. It's tricky, and that's one of the big insights here, isn't it? Knowing your limits and understanding where these opportunities lie. I think obviously we've already made the case for journaling being one of those key methods to really scrutinize opportunities. I think also sharing with other people is something that benefits me. You know, I will voice a particular direction or opportunity that's come up with, trusted allies, so to speak, maybe past colleagues, mentors, partners, friends, just to sense check it. You know, sometimes the act of just saying something out loud and almost pitching the idea, hey, Mike, you know, I'm thinking about becoming a children's author. So that's enough to then opportunistically diagnose whether this is going to be something that's going to be a bit of a time sap and actually is a bit of a distraction. You know, we have already made the case in previous episodes that distractions are often down to things that we want to run away from. You know, you look for distractions because maybe your work is actually a little bit too hard. So in which case, and I've done it too, I'll lean into something that maybe is pointless because I'll just be looking to do something different.
Imagine
So
this. Imagine this. If every single thing that came your way, your first thing was, I'll take a breath and then give it a score 1 to 10.
how
Even
good?
even just doing that, you'd start be like, Now here's my build. If something is like a 7, it's really dangerous because it sounds pretty good, right? It's sort of like, yeah, but there's a little but there. What I would always do is play devil's advocate, exactly like you talked about, with somebody else. Look, I've been offered this. It's really good, but here's the catch. What do you think? And I think that conversation might yield like, ooh, it really is a 7. Yeah, it's not quite there. And I think that it's about developing that evaluation as opposed to what I'm terrible at is wishful thinking. I'm like, that sounds amazing. And I don't think about, I've got to spend all this time traveling and I don't have that kind of time. And it's like, all of a sudden I've overcommitted. Oh my gosh, the wife's saying I'm not spending any time with the family. This could be a disaster.
Yeah.
I admit I've got a lot to learn here. Mark, big question for you as we quickly wrap up. What are you going to take home as your homework? What are you going to work on now that you've entered the essential zone?
I like that final clip. I think that's the real meat that I'm going to take away today, which is having a sort of internal scorecard of opportunities as they arise. Where do they sit on the scale, not only of 0 to 7, but more importantly, as you point out, the 7 to 10 range?
Yeah.
Which are the ones that are good, but not great? Because those are the ones that are potentially a bit distracting. Yeah. Which one for you, Mike, is going to be your homework?
I might be
harder each week.
It does. I might be agreeing with you. I tell you why. Is I have such a let's do it default mode. I just have to keep checking myself. So I'm not like, and then a month later I'm like, why did I say yes? Why the hell did I say yes?
Enthusiasm can get in the way.
I think if we can say no, we can be off to the races. And that's certainly what we've done today on this show. We've said no to the waste, but we have said yes to being better and to Essentialism, the book by Greg McKeown, here on show 266. And boy, what a journey it's been. It started with the idea, the fundamental thing, that less but better, not more. That's number one. Now, what's crazy, if we do this for long enough, we have success, but then success can lead to failure because we end up saying yes to everything. So watch out for that. So how do we get over it? Make space for those essential atomic level habits to reflect, to challenge yourself and be better every day, to continue the essential journey. And as you do that, your number one weapon is being a la Warren Buffett and saying no 99 times out of 100. Because when you say yes, you will be becoming the best version of yourself. And that's what we are all about here on the Moonshots Podcast. That's a wrap.